So the question is our opponent going to under-bluff or over-bluff here compared to the solver? All right, drum roll. In the actual hand, our opponent had, hey everybody, Phil here. Today I'm going to go over another hand in this Phil vs. Solver series, where I look at how somebody played a hand, how a solver would play it, and how I would play it differently. Then at the end, we'll see who was right, even though it doesn't actually really mean anybody was right. All right, so in today's hand, our hero is playing 25 no limit at a fast fold table, which does impact things a little bit. Play is generally tighter. And our hero has ace-10 suited in the small blind. The button opens, and actually this is button's opening to a sizing that we're not usually going to face. Button's opening at 3.4x. And our hero 3-bets in the small blind with ace-10 of hearts to 12 big blinds. Just going to treat this as kind of a standard, more standard sizings for the purposes of analysis. But just so you know, that's what happened. Flop is king 4-3 rainbow, no hearts. Our hero decides to c-bet third pot, which I mean strikes me as fine. You could certainly consider c-betting range on this board. Villain calls. Turn is a 10 of spades, bringing 2 spades. We now have second pair top kicker, and our hero checks, which I think is pretty standard. And we face a half pot bet. Our hero calls the half pot bet. River is an offsuit 7. We check and face pot size jam. And our hero did decide to call. So let's start out by seeing what the solver has to say. So starting on the flop, king 4-3 rainbow, solver wants to bet 98% of hands, so betting full range. And the solver wants to mix between third pot, half pot, 3/4 pot. I would, with most of the hands going in the half pot range, I would simplify this and just half pot my full range. I think that trying to balance 3 sizings is crazy. And on this board, sometimes some boards I balance 2 sizings, but on this board where kind of like 33, 50, and 75 are all pretty close in sizing, and most of them are going into the half pot range, I think I would just go half pot. But our hero third pot, which is certainly not a mistake, gets called. Just want to take a look at the weakest calls and some raises here in the solver. So thinnest calls are going to be kind of like queen 10, jack 10 with a backdoor flush draw. And then obviously like the gut shots and open enders are calling sometimes, and the raises, it's not raising too frequently. Most like centered around top pair as like good top pair is the main value hand, and kind of a smattering of other stuff. So villain calls, 10 of spades on the turn. Now what's out of position strategy? So out of position, mostly using small bets. So 33 and 50, I would probably simplify to just using 50% pot. Given that it's mostly betting, it's mostly choosing half pot when it bets. And it's doing a little bit of bigger betting, but it's checking about only a quarter of the time. So still, like, because imposition is raising so many king, queen, and king, jack hands, this is a really good board for the 3-better. We have the big ace king advantage that we get to leverage, and also like any of the other king x hands can keep betting. You can see actually even king 6 is betting half pot, so any king can keep betting, and some 10x hands are betting as well. So ace 10 with hearts is actually doing a lot of betting here in theory, and even queen 10 doing a little bit of betting. 10-9 is doing a lot of betting, so it's kind of like what I would imagine is a 1-street bet with hands like 10-9. And let's just see if in theory we half pot, get called, the river's a brick, which I guess is an offsuit 8, let's say. What's our thinnest value bet? This is how I like to study. Thinnest value bet on the river for all in would be king 6. Yeah. Occasional, a little bit of ace 10. No, that ace 10. Yeah. So a little bit of ace 10 can jam river, but mostly not. So like what this tells me is, so when the solver wants to like bet a lot of. The solver has two sizings on the river, and it's one of them is all in for like 70% pot, and the other is third pot. I don't want both of those sizings in this spot. It just seems too complex. So I think I'd probably remove some of my 10x turn bets, like the ones that can't go all in on the river. So I would probably check ace 10, which is a fine play anyways, and the play that our hero decided to make. Which, I mean, yeah, is doing half the time in the solver, and our hero went for it. So now we face a half pot bet. First of all, if we look at our opponent's value range, basically every top pair is betting. It's even like Jack, and occasional, like Jack, ace 10 get in there occasionally, but basically the value range is top pair plus. There's almost no slow playing, occasionally checking a set, which probably is not going to happen in practice. But yeah, this strategy as far as value looks pretty intuitive. So I wouldn't expect our opponent to mess it up too much. One thing that our opponent might mess up is the solver is betting some, like almost a third of its low pair hands. So like 6-6, 5-5, 5-4. Betting all of its 5. And this is kind of a merge bet. You're getting called by some ace queen. You're probably folding out some, I guess I can just look at this. Getting called by ace queen and folding out some like pocket eights. Yep, pocket eights mostly folding, pocket nines folding half the time, pocket sevens always folding. Ace queen is actually not calling, it's shoving. That's crazy to me that it's shoving some like ace queen of clubs. That's strange to me. Same with ace jack. So it's not check calling ace high. I'm not totally sure about that bet. It's kind of a pure, I mean, it's bluffing off of a couple hands and then it's protection. Out of position is calling a little bit of what, like jack nine suited, which I kind of thought those would be the check raise hands and not ace queen. So that's news to me. Anyways, so that's something that I think people might miss, myself included. In the actual hand, our opponent bet half pot. Ace 10 is a pure call. We never consider doing anything else. And that's what our hero does. So we head into the river with, which is the offsuit 7. Don't have any leads. I mean, we shouldn't, I think. And our opponent's going to play pretty well here for value. So all top pair are jamming. If he gets here with queens or jacks, queens are actually jamming and jacks are checking. Then a little bit of, so this is going to kind of be key that ace 10 is actually sometimes shoving for value. Queen 10 is sometimes shoving for value. So I'd imagine the solver is never going to fold, ace 10 because it beats value. It actually folds no ace 10 suited, but it's folding a lot of ace 10 off, presumably because the ace 10 offs that it's folding unblock. Actually, I don't really know why it's choosing the combos it is. But anyway, so ace 10 is pretty close to, let's call it neutral EV on the river. So our opponent's playing it, and that is unsurprising to me. So the question is our opponent going to under-bluff or over-bluff here compared to the solver, given that I know nothing about this opponent, other than that they actually opened a little bit too wide on the button. So they're going to get the value range right, I think. Top pair plus. One question is, do we expect this opponent to call pre-flop with hands that should fold? So if we go all the way back to pre-flop, the solver's folding king 10 off, the solver's folding king 9 off, the solver's folding almost all king jack off, and the solver's folding king 8 suited and king 7 suited. So is this player who's opening too wide or opening too big going to call too many hands like king 8 suited and king jack offsuit? I think probably. Now that works in a couple ways, because if they're calling with hands like that, then they have other kind of air hands that they shouldn't have, like queen 9 off, I guess, although that probably folds flop. Anyways, so I do think in practice, this villain's going to have a lot of value hands. Let's see what the bluffs look like. It's actually shoving 7-6, which is shocking to me, and that's maybe like a merge play. I think it's a bluff. Some low pairs are bluffing. And then some ace highs are bluffing and some are checking. I think that's probably, what we see. And then anything worse than ace high that got here is bluffing pretty much. But there are not very many of those. And actually, the biggest category of hands that can bluff and that are bluffing at a reasonable frequency are specifically ace high. So let's take a look at those and see. Sort of a lot of bluffs here with ace queen, ace jack. I kind of feel like those are going to get missed. I think that people tend to check back turn with ace queen and ace jack pretty frequently, unless they have spades, in which case they probably don't bluff river very often. So I think our opponent's going to miss some of those bluffs most likely. I think the bluffs with like 5-5 and 4-5, they're definitely going to miss. Not that there are very many of those, but there are a few percent. 7x, I don't think they're going to jam. So what this is saying, and I don't know that they'll be betting ace 10 for value or queen 10 for value. So to me, it seems like this opponent, rather than having a bluff to value ratio that makes ace 10 indifferent, so like, 2 value to 1 bluff, I think instead of 2 value, this is very simplistic terms, but instead of 2 value hands, they might have 2.5, and instead of the 1 bluff, they might have half. And so actually, instead of 2 to 1, it goes to 5 to 1 value to bluff ratio. And I think this hand just becomes a fold. So solver would mix this hand with our exact combo. The solver would call ace 10 of, like, it's calling suited ace 10 and folding offsuit ace 10, which I honestly don't understand. I guess because a lot of bluffs come from ace queens. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't really get it. So it's like neutral EV, but solver says call. I'm going to say fold. I would fold this one. So now we get to find out who was right. All right, drum roll. In the actual hand, our opponent had ace jack of spades. The call was good, and this is actually a hand that this doesn't tell me that much, because I did say I thought they would miss the ace queen and ace jack turn bets without spades, but this was ace jack of spades. I did say I thought they'd be more likely to check back river with spades, so I got that maybe slightly wrong, but it's unclear, and I think having seen this doesn't really negate any of the reads that I made, and so I would still fold. Having seen the villain play this hand this way, I still think it's probably a fold. However, congrats to our hero who won a nice pot. If you have a hand that you want to send in, please do. You can put it in the comments below, or you can send it into askphilgalfond@gmail.com, and I can use those in a future video. To give you an idea of what I'm looking for, I'm looking for hands that reach the river and ideally see showdown, because you guys like to see the results.